I do have concerns that we're a little bit too quick to pull the trigger on putting especially children on medications, especially SSRIs.
Right.
But I also recognize that it's necessary in many cases. The only thing that that really bothers me is sometimes as clinicians, I feel like there's this attitude that when a patient comes in and they're depressed, the only thing we do for them is prescribe them a
Right.
medication. And
Absolutely.
that's my repulsion right there. I think we need to be more mindful that there's other modalities such as mindfulness, CBT, other one-on-one counseling where you can gain skills that you can carry on with you.
Right.
So that's the first thing. And on the thought of, patients being put on medication, I have some stats for you. So the annual percentage of young people who took antidepressants, a stimulant, or an antipsychotic. So for age groups 3 to 5, it was 0.8% of the population. For ages 6 to 12, it was 5.4% of the general population. Age group 13 to 18, 7.7% of the population. So I don't know what your reaction is. Some of you listening might be like, oh my God, that's so high. Some of you listening might be like, oh my God, that's like not high enough. So initially I had thought, wow, that's like almost 10% of people age, 13 to 18 that are on SSRI or a different psychiatric medication. However, when we looked further at the prescription rates compared to the diagnosis rates, it kind of paints a different story. You kind of start to get the more full, the more comprehensive, and the truth starts to come out. So, for example, about 1 in 8 teens experience depression each year, but less than 1 in 30 were prescribed antidepressants.
Okay.
About 1 in 12 children have symptoms of ADHD each year, but only 1 in 20 received a stimulant.
Okay.
So, in fact, children in the United States may be under-medicated. That kind of terminology sounds a little bit
Right.
off-putting, but I guess, what it really means is that there's a lot of patients out there that could potentially benefit from being on a medication that have been diagnosed with the pathology, however, are not actively being treated for it. And you have to wonder what kind of even economic cost that's causing to our society, right? I
Right.
talked about earlier, at an age demographic of 12 to 18, untreated depression could mean the difference between going to college and not going to college. It
Right.
could mean the difference between, being able to marry later on in life, having a stable family life, versus having no relationship, falling into substance abuse. So it can have dramatic downstream effects. So what is the potential downward stream effects of not treating people who need to be treated? So that will be the main argument, right? And the strongest argument that we have, that these screenings are necessary and medications are absolutely necessary for children today.
Right, right. And that's, of course, just specifically to medicines. And, I think where me and you come from is, I think us mental health prescribers are, in a sense, frustrated with antidepressants at times. They can be helpful. They have helped our patients. We know the data around them, but they take a long time to work. They hypothetically can increase suicidal thoughts, especially in the pediatric population. But I also like to remain as optimistic as possible. One thing that got me actually into medicine as opposed to therapy is, what is the new role and innovation of psychiatry? Is there going to be more drastic interventions that we can do immediately to try to get someone out of depression in maybe a few hours, rather than over taking this pill every single day for 4 to 6 weeks, and then we'll know if it's actually having an effect or not? Is there a role of transcranial magnetic stimulation more in the pediatric realm? Is there a role of even ketamine or these other modalities that are now just trying and just starting to kind of get some traction in this nation? Who knows? I'm optimistic, I'm curious, I'm skeptical, all in the same regard. But I think I just want to stress, like, kind of what we said earlier, like, the number one killer of this patient population, ages, what did you quote? It was 12 to
12 to
18,
Mm-hmm.
is suicide. We have to be as aggressive as possible. And so I know some parents definitely can feel, and maybe some teachers, like, oh, you're giving me more work to do. Oh, now the teacher Or maybe that parent does have that kind of gut reaction, like, oh, this is just the farm industry trying to get my kid on pills, all these things. But I think it's society's answer to try to avoid this dire situation that we find ourselves in where our kids are dying from suicide.